Welcome back to another video. Today we're doing the sequel to yesterday's video. And by yesterday, I mean last week's video. Although, who knows when you're watching this, so to you it's just a new video. We're going to talk about the rarest and most expensive games in my collection today. So I just did a video talking about my least expensive games, and I figure, well, it's only fair that we talk about the top end of what I own too. Something about me, I don't really collect my stuff with value in mind. I only care about the value in as far as what is the price when I want to buy it. And then I don't really track it. I mean, I have my collection in websites and stuff, but I'm not like checking in on it to see, oh, is it trending up or is it trending down? Once I own it, I kind of like, I lose the price in my mind. So, I mean, some of these I was generally aware of because I do eBay streams and I, go to game stores and stuff, so I know pricing generally. But some of these were a little surprising to me. It was surprising to see what was sort of the top end. So similar to that last video, we're going to go by console. So every single console and handheld that I own, with a few limited exceptions where it just wasn't very interesting, I have what is the most expensive game in my collection. And I think this will be fun. It's just designed to be a little bit of like a kickback, grab a beverage, maybe listen to it as a podcast type video, but also I think that this is an interesting topic because a lot of these were purchased at a time long before now when they were going for well below what they go for now. So if anything, maybe it's a little like history lesson in what has happened with game pricing over time. But and where I can, I'll try to share, like stories about when I got them, how, stuff like that. But starting off, we're going to start with PS1 at $403. The most expensive game in my collection is Tail Concerto. And I remember buying this one. Well, first off, if you've never played it before, it has kind of like a Mega Man Legends vibe to it. It's like a open world action adventure game. Very gorgeous visuals. It does have these like animalistic, furry adjacent characters. And generally it's a pretty good game. Atlas published. I haven't got all the way through it, but I played a bit of it, probably a couple hours in, and I liked my time with it. One that I do intend to like go back to and really sink my teeth into, though. I remember buying this. It was, I forget, maybe 2014, 2015, something like that. And there was a competition at my work. I work in IT. And at my job at the time, they were doing some like user acceptance testing on an application, and they needed a bunch of users to go run these test scripts. And so they said, hey, sign up for a user of this app, run through these test scripts. Everyone who does will be entered to win an Amazon gift card. And I ended up winning the Amazon gift card. It was a $50 Amazon gift card, and I used that gift card to buy Tail Concerto on Amazon, of all places. So from 50 to 403. All right, at $821. Again, all these prices come from price charting. I just grabbed whatever the current price was. It goes up and down all the time, so this may not exactly reflect what the price is today, and it doesn't really take condition into consideration. But all that said, at $821, my most expensive PS2 game is Kuon, which has apparently now risen to be the premier survival horror title on PS2. It's bumped Rule of Rose out. If you've never played this one, it's a very cool Japanese horror game. You play as these multiple different kind of shrine maidens, and you're going through these different shrines and stuff, but you play as different characters at different times or in different days and with stories that overlap. It's pretty fun, and it is pretty scary. I played all the way through this one on stream, I think 2 years ago for Horror Month. Every October I do horror game streams, and I think that's when I played through this one. But yeah, very, very fun game, but obviously just like absurdly expensive. I don't remember what I paid for this one. If I was to guess, I don't even want to lie. I don't want to over or undersell it. I got it on eBay years and years ago. And it was pricey at the time, but it was not $820. On PS3 at $140, which is just ridiculous. My most expensive game is Africa. So this is a Natsume published. Everyone compares this game to Pokemon Snap. You are in the African savannah taking photos of various, I think, locations and wildlife there. And this forever was like kind of the popular collectible game on PS3. But for a long time, there was no like really heavy hitter on PS3. Now there's NBA Elite, which, you know, was pulled before it ever fully came out. So that's kind of in its own echelon. And then there's stuff like before the reprint, like Painkiller, Hell and Damnation. But like I would say that this was the well-known, kind of popular collectible game, and it went for like $40. And I got it at a GameStop. I probably paid $30-40 for it, something like that. But now, yeah, $140. It actually finally had its moment. That one was really surprising to me. I don't know that I would pay $140 for Africa, but maybe, you know, you PS3 collectors out there, you could do a lot worse. Okay, this one's kind of cheating, but I thought it was interesting, so I wanted to include it. On PlayStation 4, my most expensive game at like around $250 is the Annapurna Interactive Deluxe Limited Edition. So, if you've never seen this before, Annapurna Interactive put out a basically an anthology to it. And when you open it up, it shows a little bit about all their different games. So, Gorogoa, What Remains of Edith Finch, Sayonara Wild Hearts, Telling Lies. Outer Wilds is in here, which is a great game. I love Annapurna Interactive as a publisher. They publish some of my all-time favorite games, namely Outer Wilds and Sayonara Wild Hearts, but also What Remains of Edith Finch. And so when they put this up, it was around that price when it was released. It was not cheap. It was like $200. But I 100% knew that I was going to pick this one up. And it has, at the very least, it's held its value. So there's all the games that are on it, although, again, I know that my webcam doesn't really focus too much. This is the only physical way, or it was the only physical way at the time, to get Telling Lies. So I don't know if that is like contributing to some of its collectability. There's also two versions of this. There's this one that has this kind of like bookshelf style. And then there's also one that is just a collection of 8 like PS4 DVD style cases. Has the same games, and they seem to go for about the same amount. But, you know, this is the, I think, fancier, more interesting one to just kind of demo and showcase here. So that's a collection of 8 games. So maybe it doesn't really count, but I'm going to count it. If we weren't counting that, it looks like Firewatch would be my most expensive game at about $150. All right, moving into Sony's handhelds, we have the PlayStation Portable. We have a copy of Persona 2, Innocent Sin. I have not played this one. In fact, part of its value comes from the fact that it is still sealed. I played the first Persona for about 5 hours or so, and at the time, I was not really getting into it. That's not to say that I don't think it's a good game, but it was not the right kind of RPG for me at that point. It is, the first two Personas, if you haven't played them, are very different in tone and a little bit in gameplay from the Personas that got much more popular later, you know, 3 and especially 4 and now 5. So these are kind of a little bit of like culture shock to go back to in some ways, but that's not to say that they aren't fun. And this one in particular, I think, you know, that price probably includes like the big outer box and stuff, but it's still, these games have held their value quite a bit, these PSP Persona titles. And then on Vita, my most expensive game at $329 is Arno Sergei Plus, or Arno Surge Plus, I think it's Sergei, Ode to an Unborn Star. At the time, so in this era, I think a lot of us were like this, or a lot of people out there were like this. This was kind of the tail end of when I was really into collector's editions. During like the PS3, PSP, into the Vita era, I think collector's editions were still really popular. There's still some folks out there that definitely love collector's editions, and more power to you. But this is one of the last collector's editions I bought for a game that I didn't really know about. If I'm being honest, I purchased this for my partner, so I have not played it. I don't know too much about it, but this one in particular, for some reason, it really held its value. So, I mean, a lot of stuff on Vita is very expensive these days, but that is my most expensive individual Vita game. I think it might even still be the case if you were to not count special editions and you just counted like retail releases. I think that might still win. Or maybe Breach and Clear. Okay. Now we're moving on to NES. And this is, remember when I said factor is not considered in these prices? This is definitely true. The most expensive Castlevania at $240. I think it's the most expensive one because it's the first one. But yes, $240. The original Castlevania. Now mine's not worth $240 because it says John Delano up the side and all across the back. But I got this for very cheap, so I was like, you know what? We're going to get the John Delano edition of Castlevania. All of the like highest end games in my NES collection right now are all just the popular titles because, you know, the like key issues became very popular. Punch-Out, Mario, Castlevania, stuff like that. All those, Metroid, all those have gotten pretty expensive. And this is, now mine's definitely not worth that 200 something, but probably still is my most expensive NES game. Super Nintendo, this is a big one and kind of an obvious one, at $1,748. We've got the big box Earthbound. I've told the story of this one before. I actually got the guide first for like $50 at a local game store. And then I spent a long time tracking down the outer box and got the outer box for a couple hundred. And then finally, the last piece I got was the cart. So all in all, this ended up costing me, I think, about like $400 over the course of like 2 years. For a long time, I didn't have the cart, and the box just sat in my closet waiting to be reunited. But crazy how expensive this one has become. Earthbound is a legendary game, though. Like, there are few games better or as special than Earthbound. So in some ways deserving of the number one spot, although it is quite unfortunate that it is such an absurd price and so prohibitive to so many people. And then next for Virtual Boy at $1,869. Also, I believe the most expensive game I own, full stop, is Jack Bros. So again, this has kind of all the hallmarks of collectability. It is, first off, it's a Virtual Boy game, so it's on an obscure Nintendo system. It is an Atlas published title, so it has Atlas's collectability. It is both a twin stick shooter that also has kind of like a horror Halloween vibe, so you get your shoot 'em up boost and you get your horror boost. It was a very late print, like after kind of the tail end of the Virtual Boy, so it was always destined to go up really, really high. And it is a fun game. It is definitely not worth that crazy, almost $2,000 price. This one, I remember I purchased a lot off of eBay for about $400. That was a Virtual Boy headset and about half of the library. And this was one of the games in there. And it was just on a new buy it now, and I was able to get it. I already had a Virtual Boy, so the second one was a backup. And when it arrived, I opened it up, and it was just the outer box for a Virtual Boy, like the box that the Virtual Boy headset came in. No games, no system, nothing. So what had happened is the guy who was selling his Virtual Boy collection, for some reason he put all this stuff up as one lot, and then he also put that empty box up separately. And when he went to ship them, they got the addresses crossed. So my lot was being shipped to someone else, and I got this Virtual Boy box. But I opened it right away when it got here, saw that that's what it was. I messaged the guy, and he was so stressed. Honestly, I felt so bad for him. He was so stressed because he's like, oh, God, like that other guy is going to get a way more expensive thing, and he's not going to want to give it back. So he got a hold of UPS or USPS, and he was able to intercept the package before it was delivered, get it rerouted to be delivered to me, and then I shipped him back that other box. So it worked out in the end, but it was a close call. I almost missed what was probably my only chance at ever owning Jack Bros. I feel fortunate, but I do feel bad for the years I took off that guy's life in stress. Next up here on Nintendo 64 at $366, we have Goemon's Great Adventure. I got this from a local game store for about $100 a while back. And I actually, for a long time, I didn't play it because I don't have the first Goemon game, Mystical Ninja, on Nintendo 64, not the first one ever. But eventually I did decide to play this. I played it on stream, and this was just a really great game. Really loved Goemon. Very unique, not much else like it out there. And yeah, if you like the Super Nintendo games, this is really quite fun. Definitely a must own, or at least a must play in the Nintendo 64 library. One of the better ones. A little obscure at times, but a lot of fun. All right, we're moving on to GameCube. My most expensive game is Fire Emblem Path of Radiance at $225. This is a pretty fun Fire Emblem game. It's not my all-time favorite. I am admittedly, well, I was going to say I'm a new Fire Emblem fan more than the older ones. And when I say new, I mean post-Awakening. But I also really like the first Game Boy Advance one. So maybe it's just that this one is, even though all the Fire Emblem games are great, this one's maybe a little lower in my priority list. But I got this one from a friend of mine. I don't remember how much I paid. It wasn't too expensive. But it came without a manual, and I had to spend a long time tracking down just a manual. Just a manual for this game is not easy to come by. But whatever I paid, he gave me definitely the buddy price on it. So it was probably more like 100 or something, but I really don't remember. Pretty popular, pretty collectible game on GameCube. All right. Gosh, this one is crazy. One of my best thrift finds ever. At $203 on the Wii, Veggie World. And most of you are saying, what the heck is a Veggie World? And that's reasonable. Veggie World is a side-scrolling, fruit-based shoot-'em-up game. And I think it has a little bit of collectability because it's a shoot-'em-up. But I think this is mostly just one of those uncommon games that set collectors need. I have since moved jobs, but there used to be a mom and pop thrift resale shop like a couple blocks away from where I worked. So every day on my lunch break, I would just pop down there and see if they got anything. They just had a couple of small plastic bins of games, and it was usually like the 360 Call of Duty games and some Wii stuff. But one day, randomly, sitting in that bin for $2.99 was Veggie World. And at the time, it was like an $80 game. It wasn't nearly what it is here, but it has apparently since gone up to $203. It's not a great game. I don't recommend it. There's also a DS version that I haven't played that I can also pretty safely not recommend. All right. For the Wii U, at $305, Devil's Third. Jank incarnate, the game. This game is destined. I swear it is destined to go down in price because it is not as rare as people think it is. It was printed multiple times, multiple copies. There are minimum print runs that are required for games like this. So there's probably tens of thousands of copies of this in existence. It just has a reputation for being rare and underprinted, and so people pay a lot for it. I mean, it has gone down. Devil's Third used to be up in like the $500 range, but this is definitely one of the Wii U collectible titles. I just got mine new when it came out for $40 or something. I've been saving it ever since then. I want to stream this game, and I've just never found the time. So, yeah, Devil's Third. We'll get around to it at some point. On Switch, for almost $200, $197, my most expensive game is the Special Reserve Edition of The Messenger. Excellent game by Sabotage Studios, who also just put out Sea of Stars as of recording this not too many months ago. That's a great game. This is also a great game. It's a Ninja Gaiden style game that plays with both 8 and 16-bit gameplay. So it's a pretty meaty, substantial game for being kind of a retro throwback. And I think that this was the first physical edition published for it. Now, there have been other physical editions of this game, but this one is, it's like shiny collector's edition. It's got a little fuzz there. But it's just a phenomenal game. I do think it's crazy that there's already Switch games that are worth $200. It's like Switch has never even had the opportunity to go down in price. So, but really, you should play The Messenger. It's so good. All right, on Game Boy at $320. Apparently, I don't know why this is the more expensive one. It's probably close between multiple copies. But we have Pokemon Red. Now, I was a Pokemon Blue kid growing up, but I did eventually have both versions back in the day. And this is a nice, very clean copy. Pokemon, I mean, it obviously has the cultural cachet, which is why it's expensive. And yeah, like most people my age, a very meaningful series to me, right? This is responsible, even though I didn't know it at the time, this is responsible for getting me into turn-based RPGs. I still buy and play every new Pokemon game that comes out. And I'm not surprised that these have gotten so pricey because so many people want to relive their childhood. But yeah, Pokemon Red, apparently more than Yellow or Blue. Pokemon Red is the one. Also, maybe not the last time we'll talk about Pokemon. All right, at $613. My God, that is way too much. We have on Game Boy Color, Wendy Every Which Way. So this is a late release, way forward published 2D platformer. And the mechanic that you use is that when you press a button, you can reverse gravity and you can stand on the ceiling or on the floor and you hop back and forth like that. It's a pretty fun game. Visually, it's very nice. What's cool is that since it was released so late in the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy Advance was already out. And if you plug it into a Game Boy Advance, there's a couple of bonus stages that are only playable on an Advance that have like some fancier visuals. I think mostly like extra like scrolling in the background. They're kind of like outer space galactic themed levels that you can play. But this is only like a 1 or 2 hour game, if even. I think it's like a 1 hour game. So very short. Certainly if you're the type of person that's trying to do like dollar per hour, Wendy Every Which Way has got to be one of the worst values in gaming, but a fun game. I don't recall when I got that, other than to say it was not $613. Got it on eBay. Same with this one, Game Boy Advance, my most collectible game at $350. Tiny Toon Adventures, Scary Dreams. This is actually a pretty similar story, you know. Wendy Every Which Way was like a cartoony hidden gem of a game published by a well-known or developed by a well-known studio in WayForward. This is a cartoony hidden gem of a game published by a well-known studio in Treasure. So this is like a side-scrolling action beat-em-up type game that Treasure put together, so it has all kind of the visual flair and pizzazz of a Treasure game. And yeah, this one's pretty fun. This one was hard because I got a really good deal on a cart at some point, and I needed to find a box for it. It took me forever to find just a box for it. I did end up finding like a box and manual only, but honestly, I probably should have just bought a complete copy and sold off the extra cart because it was not easy to track down. Really good game, though. Hey, I said we'd talk about Pokemon again. On DS at $315 is the complete big box for Pokemon Heart Gold. I still remember back in the day when new releases would come out, I would go to Walmart, the 24-hour Walmart, and at midnight they would let you buy the new games. So I remember my partner Sprite and I walking into a Walmart. I bought Pokemon Heart Gold, she bought Pokemon Soul Silver, and we ended up playing those together. I was a Pokemon kid, so I had a lot of nostalgia for this on Game Boy Color, and it was really fun to revisit, do all the Pokewalker stuff. The DS era was just a good time. So these have really gone up in price, especially if you have the Pokewalker. I think this one does have the Pokewalker, but I think our Soul Silver has since lost the Pokewalker. So we'll have to track one of those down at some point to recomplete that. But I love these kind of like nice textured boxes that these re-releases have. All right, what do we have next? 3DS at $244. Now this is probably more like $170 because mine doesn't have the manual. But we have a copy of Alien Chaos 3D, which is a very weird, just collectible game on the 3DS. It's like a single screen run and gun shoot 'em up game. It reminds me a lot of something that would have been like an early Xbox Live Arcade game. I think it was originally an eShop or a DSware title that got a physical release. It's perfectly fine. I got this I was on a road trip visiting some friends in the next state over, and on the way we stopped at a couple game stores, and I picked this up for like $17 or something, just on a whim. Like I mentioned, it does not have its manual, so it's not complete. This is one of the 3DS games that had a manual. Not all of them did. So it's definitely not worth that full $244, and I didn't look up the manual list price, but definitely very collectible game on the 3DS. I think the second on this one would have been the Fire Emblem Fates Special Edition. If anyone knows where I can find just a manual to complete my Alien Chaos 3D, let me know. All right, on Master System. Now, again, another one that I should have looked up the actual price for my version of the game. But at $291 for a US copy would be Golden Axe Warrior. And this is a Zelda-style action-adventure RPG in the Golden Axe universe. It is actually pretty good. One of the better games on the Master System, I think. Really quite a fun, quite a complete game. It's a shame that there was never more kind of in this style, at least not that I'm aware of. This has come to various collections and things, so there are other ways to play it. And I know people are going to ask, no, my copy does not have the sticker proving that it's a North American version. For folks that don't know, there's a small handful of Master System games that were poured, like when they released them in North America, they just took existing European copies and they put a new barcode sticker over this UPC, and everything else is identical. The manual is identical, the artwork's identical, the cart's identical. And so the only way to identify like a North American release is that sticker. There's like, I forget, like 6 or something like that of those games. Sonic the Hedgehog is probably the most famous of them. And that sticker adds tons of value because that's how you know it's like a North American copy. I like physical games, but I'm not really looking to pay crazy amounts for a version with a sticker. So, again, this is definitely worth less than what a North American copy would go for, but even just the PAL copy would be my most expensive Master System game. I got that one at a Midwest Gaming Classic in like 2017. So, all right, on Genesis, at $1,499, we have Crusader of Senti. This is not sealed. It's one of those copies where the shrink wrap was cut on the top so that you can slide the tray in and out, but otherwise it still has its shrink on it, or it's cut at the bottom. Sorry, but this is a nice complete copy. I did not pay the $14.24 plus tax. This is the sticker on there. I think I paid $300 or $400. I had a bunch of extra like eBay bucks sitting around, and I used that to mostly pay for this many years ago. So still paid way too much, but it has since gone really far up. Crusader of Senti is great because it feels like a Super Nintendo game on the Genesis. It's bright, it's colorful, it's very charming. It's got this sort of like mechanic that involves using various animals. It just really, it's a very standout title amongst the Genesis libraries. One of my favorite games on the system, actually. So this is definitely a play it any way you can type of game. All right, on Sega CD, my most expensive game is a copy of Snatcher at apparently $1,099. Very fun visual novel. I mean, I guess fun. Very interesting visual novel. Famous because this was one of Hideo Kojima's earliest games and has a lot of like Metal Gear references and stuff in there. Very Blade Runner-y, very Terminator-y. It's very inspired by pop culture and movies of that era. It is pretty good. It has a great soundtrack and a lot of nice like pixel art visuals and stuff. It's an awesome game. It's very cool. But it is also very famous for being hard to come by. So I think at some point this will get a really nice re-release. I know that hasn't happened to date, but it just seems like limited run or someone will eventually get this one out, so that it can be a little more obtainable and a little more accessible for people, because it is an excellent game, a lot of fun, but way too expensive. All right, we have for 32X at $262, everyone's favorite hummingbird shoot 'em up, Calibri. One of the more interesting exclusives on the 32X, so pretty collectible. It's a side-scrolling shooter where you play as a hummingbird. And I guess, I say it's a side-scrolling shooter. It plays a lot like Echo the Dolphin, although I do like this one more than Echo the Dolphin. Really nice visuals, just a really interesting, unique concept. And because it is exclusive, interesting, and has shoot 'em up energy, it's become one of the more desirable games on 32X for people that are going to play games. It's certainly not like, Spider-Man Web of Fire, but it is desirable for sure, and it's a lot of fun. All right. And on Sega Saturn, the one that most people think of when they think of high-end Sega Saturn, at $942, Panzer Dragoon Saga. All of these expensive games like Snatcher, Panzer Dragoon Saga, I got probably in the mid 2010s on eBay for around $200 to $300 each. So well before they were quite as expensive as they are, but still a lot of money. Panzer Dragoon Saga needs to come out elsewhere because this game is excellent. It's got such a cool, unique battle system with the way you ride the dragons and can pivot around. Visually, it is really nice, really good soundtrack, interesting story. It truly is kind of one of the lost and isolated RPGs, and I hope more people get the chance to play it at some point and in some way, because I think a lot of people would really love that if they only had the opportunity. All right, on Dreamcast, my most expensive game, a survival horror title. Maybe a little bit bumped up by the time I'm doing this video, because it is currently October, so horror stuff is probably on the up. But according to price charting, $232, we have Illbleed, which is a very weird survival horror game with all sorts of weird, interesting stuff happening. It's just kind of quirky and odd. There's really not much you can say about it that you wouldn't be better off just experiencing by playing it. Certainly one of the more unique games on Dreamcast, or really on any system, but a really awesome game. A lot of fun. I got this one at a local game store. I used to go out every week shopping for new games, and I got this one at a local game store for about $80, I think. So, not too bad. Game Gear. This one was another one that surprised me. And this is our final Sega game, by the way. At $331, we have a copy of Tempo Jr. Tempo Jr. So Tempo Jr. is a pretty colorful, pretty cool platformer on the Game Gear, but it is pretty easy. So this is Tempo, the same character that has a 32X game, and Super Tempo on the import Sega Saturn. Tempo Jr. is kind of like a pared down, a little more kid-friendly version of that game. And this one is, it's pretty fun, but I didn't realize it was so expensive. The price was a little strange because I got the cart a long time ago in a lot or something for very cheap. And then I waited and I just got a box for it. So I didn't really know what that one was selling for, but was a bit surprised. All right, let's take a sip of coffee before we move into Xbox here. There we go. All right, on Xbox, I didn't bring the whole kit and caboodle out, but I did bring the game as a representation. At $262 is the complete Steel Battalion. Here's the game. The levers and the controllers are sitting in my crawl space. Another game that I do intend on streaming at some point. Famous for having the huge 3-piece, multi-lever, multi-button, elaborate controller, mech combat game. And I still, I got this at there was a local trade event for my local retro game Facebook group. This was, again, years and years ago. And I went and someone was selling it for $100 or $80. I remember at the time, this would have been a good deal. I tried to trade him a Vectrex. I had an extra Vectrex. Extra Vectrex is a hard thing to say. I had an extra Vectrex. And I tried to just do a straight trade, and he was like, I'm not interested in Vectrex. So I ended up just buying this for 80, which I guess worked out for me because the Vectrex ended up being worth more. But yeah, really think this is going to be a lot of fun to stream. I just haven't done it yet. All right. And on Xbox 360, a somewhat collectible tactical RPG, we have Atlus's Operation Darkness. This is one that I honestly don't have too much to say about because when I got it in like a buy two get one free sale at GameStop. This was probably like $17.99. May have even been the free game, and so I have not popped this one in or checked it out yet. I do want to. It's interesting that there's like a tactical RPG with a bit of like a darker overtone, and it does have like 4-player co-op, I guess. So I guess that's over Xbox Live, but yeah, Atlus and Success. What a weird game this is. Probably is not going to get ported anytime and has become a lot more collectible than I realized. All right, Xbox One. We have, again, this is a representation of the larger set. $360. We have Rock Band 4. And I know what you're thinking. Hey, Rock Band 4 is not worth that. But apparently the full band in a box bundle, the drums, guitar, mic, and this, is worth $360 because, surprising to me, plastic instruments have gotten expensive. They used to be so hard to get rid of, so dime a dozen, and eventually now they're more desirable once they stopped mass producing them. But yeah, massive Rock Band fan. I've talked about it on the channel before, and I'm sure I will again. I've loved this series forever. Me and my fiance play it all the time. She sings and I play drums. I have, at various times in my life, been genuinely obsessed with Rock Band. I've put probably thousands of hours into this game. Not this version, but this series. And even though this is not my favorite version, you know, it's nice to be able to continue to carry all my DLC forward and keep playing this whenever I want to. On Jaguar at a healthy $87, we have Wolfenstein 3D. This was actually a gift from my podcast co-host for Polykill, Trav, which, by the way, there's a link in the description of every video. I do 2 podcasts. One is all about playing and finishing video games called Polykill, and you should check it out. But we were doing 2 years ago? Last year? Maybe it was last year. We were doing a challenge where we were challenging ourselves and all of our listeners to finish one game on every single console and handheld that they own. At least one. Which was fun because it meant you got to play your more obscure systems that you don't always get to check out. And I didn't have many options I thought I could get through on Jaguar. My games were all pretty tough. And he ended up buying me Wolfenstein 3D so that I would have something I could beat. But right before it came, I ended up finishing Trevor McFur in the Crescent Galaxy after like 12 hours of practicing. So this one sits waiting to be played. But a big shout out to Trev for just being a good dude. All right. Coming up here, we have on the Lynx, $67, Ninja Gaiden. I think I kind of impulse bought this one. I just like the idea of there being a Ninja Gaiden game ported to Lynx. This is like looks like more of the side-scrolling beat-em-up Ninja Gaiden. But I really don't know much about this port. I have not checked it out. Looking forward to trying it. Again, I have a lot of Lynx games, and I have played some up until the point where my Lynx started breaking down. And rather than buy a new Lynx or get it recapped, I instead am waiting for the Analog Pocket adapters to come for the Lynx. So I will play more at that point. All right. Again, rounding out here with the more obscure systems. On TurboGrafx 16, I guess TurboGrafx is pretty popular. I don't have a big TurboGrafx 16 library, so my most expensive one at $84 is Bonk's Revenge. Pretty fun game. I love Bonk. I would say that the TurboGrafx is one of those libraries that I still need to commit time to really like learning and exploring. This is one of the few games I've played on it, and I really did enjoy this. But there's some classics that I need to get around to give this system the love and attention that it deserves. Because I certainly did not have one at the time when I was growing up, and I feel like there's a lot of good experiences for me to still have. Bonk's Revenge, I got a lot of like 7 or 8 TurboGrafx games for like $150 on eBay a while back. and this was one of them. So I couldn't tell you what I paid for that. Probably like 20 to 30 or so. On Vectrex at $90, my most expensive game is Fortress of Narzad. If you've never played this, or a Vectrex, first off, you should play a Vectrex. But this game is like you sit down here, and your goal is to shoot up into this like castle wall here, and your shots will reflect off of the walls. And you can defeat enemies as they come down, but your bullets can also bounce back and hit you. So it's an interesting challenge, not like much that I've seen before. And then you shoot up several screens, and then there's kind of like this boss monster that you fight. Very cool, very fun game on the Vectrex. And one of the more it's on the more collectible half. I only have about 8 or 9 Vectrex games total, but I'd love to get more. On 3DO at $320, we got a copy of Lost Eden, which is, again, just the most 3DO thing ever. I said that about Twisted, too, in my least expensive games video, but like weird CGI, side-scroller, kind of just oddity. I don't really actually know too much about this one. I got this one kind of on impulse. I think I paid like $30 for it at a local game store. And I was like, weird, exclusive-looking 3DO game? Let's go. And I have not really given it the time or attention that it deserves. But I will get around to it. All right, second to last, penultimate at $192. My most expensive Neo Geo Pocket Color game is Dark Arms Beast Buster, a kind of like RPG on the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Not one, again, that I've really played, so I don't want to pretend like I can speak intelligently about it when I can't. But I've poked at it a little bit, and it seems fun. It has like the energy of a Neo Geo Pocket oddity, I'll say. This didn't used to be as expensive, so I was surprised that it went up so much. But yeah, almost $200 for that. And finally, on the N-Gage at $203, the one game people collect for N-Gage, we have Elder Scrolls Shadow Key. Now, I think that the N-Gage deserves more respect than just the system that this is hiding on, but yes, this is a exclusive N-Gage only Elder Scrolls title. So if you're an Elder Scrolls fan, you know, you're done with Skyrim, what are you going to do next? You're going to go back and play Elder Scrolls Travel Shadow Key. This has always been a pretty desirable game on N-Gage, and one of the more collectible ones, although there are some pretty expensive ones out there. And that is it. That is all of the most expensive games on each of my systems. I think the theme that we've learned here is that the only way to get some of these, honestly, is to go back in time and buy them before they get expensive, which is unfortunate. But I am curious, what are the most expensive games in your collection? And then how did you get those, right? Like, did you get a good deal out thrifting? Is it just a game you're really passionate about and you were okay paying for? Did you buy it new and just sat on the shelf and then became valuable later, as is often the case? Let me know. But yeah, as always, again, links to the podcast and to my Twitch page are down in the description. Please feel free to come hang out. I'm playing stuff like this all the time. And until next time, peace.